Hi, so today I want to record an episode that I hope is going to be super useful and relevant to you all. As you know, I am a big fan of Amazon. I think it can be a great marketplace, but I also know that it isn't always straightforward. Things can and do go wrong, and that is entirely normal. I've been inspired to record this episode actually because at the moment I am dealing with so many issues for clients. I'm dealing with lots of seller support cases, and so I just wanted to share a little bit with you about what can happen to the kind of issues you might encounter when selling on Amazon, and importantly, how to deal with them if and when they do occur. I have also created a brand new guide for you called How to Deal with Amazon Seller Support, which I'll link in the show notes. It's completely free. You can get a hold of that, so you don't need to make any notes while I'm talking now. And hopefully, you'll find that really useful if stroke when you run into any issues on Amazon. I really wanted to talk about this, particularly because I think it's a lot of sellers assume that Amazon runs smoothly and that once your listings are live, because obviously getting your listing set up can be something in itself. Once listings are live, everything's going to run smoothly, everything's going to be fine. In reality, that isn't always the case, and issues are still common. Even in those first few days, weeks after you've listed your products, I know so many people who have listed their products, everything looks fine. And then a couple of days later, the listings got taken down because Amazon's unhappy with something. Um, that sort of thing happens. And also, you can be selling on Amazon for months, years, and then something just hits you out of the blue, even if things have been smoothly. This isn't a doom and gloom episode, by the way. I just want to be really honest about what can happen. But as I say, it's all going to be positive because we're going to talk a lot about what to do if and when you do run into any issues, because I know that some sellers struggle to get set up on Amazon in the first place because they hit hurdle after hurdle. Some sellers even stop selling on Amazon because they get stuck with problems that they just can't resolve. So, the goal of this episode is not to scare you, but to help you go into it with your eyes open and learn how to deal with it if something does go wrong. So, to give you some examples of things that can happen on Amazon, things that I've dealt with recently for clients, or things that people have contacted me about, or just things that I generally know can happen. So, restricted products and products needing approval is a key thing. So, I'm working with two brands at the moment, one of whom their products are restricted. However, they shouldn't be restricted because they actually meet the criteria to be listed. It's just taking a lot of time for Amazon to understand that they meet the criteria to be listed. Personally, I think a lot of this is because a lot of the support is via bots or something. But anyway, we've listed some products and Amazon are not happy and keep taken the listings down. And I say I am working really hard to get them reinstated. And I should actually say this is something I do for clients all of the time. I've got quite a thick skin, I'm very tenacious. I'm so used to dealing with seller support, and I'm prepared to go on and on and on until things get resolved, which is actually one of my top tips. Don't give up. Another brand that I work with, their product has also been restricted because Amazon have misclassified it, and we have to jump through a lot of hoops to show Amazon the product isn't what they think it is. So that's an issue. You also might find you might have issues with listings. For example, Amazon might not like the images you're using. That's something that's quite common. Usually, that's something you can fix yourself. You might go into barcode issues. So I have another brand that I'm working with at the moment where we've tried to set up a new product, and Amazon believes that barcode has already been used on a completely different product. Of course, this is incorrect. This is the client's barcode, it's the barcode for this product. It looks like possibly someone has misused that barcode in the past. We don't know. Trying to get to the bottom of it. This kind of thing can happen. Amazon might also incorrectly believe your product isn't what it is. So, for example, you might set up a listing for a product and Amazon believes it's actually, you're selling something similar to something that's already on Amazon, even if you've got a completely different barcode. Sometimes you might have issues with the brand name. This is quite a common one, actually, especially if you're using brand registry and your brand name on your product and the brand name on brand registry isn't an exact match. You can run into some issues here. Amazon, as I say, might not like your images. They also might not like some of the wording you're using, particularly in certain categories. So I have some clients who sell in the supplements category. You've got to be really careful about what you say. You can't make claims, for example. And then there's other things that are not even related to listing. So you might find you get some stock gets lost. I worked with someone recently whose ads got shut down because they hadn't paid the advertising invoice because Amazon had an incorrect card down for that, but they didn't tell anybody. They just stopped the ads, and then we had to do a lot of research to work out what was going on. There's a there's a lot that can happen, um, and the consequences of this vary. So for some of the things that I've mentioned, the consequences aren't terrible. So, the one client, their ads weren't running for a couple of days till we got to the bottom of it. Inconvenient, but not the end of the world. But for other clients, if listings are suppressed or closed, that's obviously missed sales, possibly stranded stock. You might get warnings on your account. And in really, really serious cases, and I stress you have to do something quite bad, your account could actually get suspended. Um, so these are all things that can be consequences of things going wrong on Amazon and them not being dealt with. Because I promise you, if something happens and you deal with it, you address it, it will go away, it will get resolved, it will get fixed. What you don't want to do when something happens is put your head in the sand or not do anything or think it will resolve itself. It won't. And seller support are not proactive. They won't always come to you and say, we've removed this listing, we're not happy with this. Often it's down to you to spot that there's a problem and then work on resolving it. But just to reassure you that most problems are fixable. Some issues are pretty straightforward and, it's just one message seller support, or sometimes you can even fix it yourself if you've got the knowledge on how to do that. Other issues can be more complex, but still manageable. I'm not joking when I say I have actually spent months before to get issues solved, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But I get them in the end, but sometimes things can be complex and it can take a while. And often the challenge isn't the issue itself, but it's navigating how to deal with Amazon to get it fixed, if that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about how we can reduce the chances of anything going wrong, first of all. Let's start there. So let's try and do everything we can to make sure nothing's going to happen. So first of all, when you're setting up your account on Amazon, make sure you submit all the information required, make sure all your information matches. So make sure you can verify your home address, your business address, anything that you're asked for, your bank account details, make sure everything's in order and you haven't made any mistakes there. I worked with someone recently who couldn't get their account set up, and it was just because they'd given the wrong person's name and they had a previous address as the main contact on the account. I'm not sure how that happened, and it's fine and it's fixable, but obviously that does cause a bit of a delay in getting set up. Do your research before listing your products. So work out, are the products you want to sell able to be listed on Amazon? Are they in a restricted category? Do you need to do anything additional to get them listed? Because what you don't want is a situation I mentioned earlier where you list something and then it gets taken down because you can't actually sell that product, or you need some kind of documentation to sell that product. Often if you're selling products like that anyway, I assume this is something you'd have, but know in advance what you might need so you're ready when you get asked for it, to understand what kind of documentation you might need. If you need invoices or compliance documents or anything at all, get this ready early. That would be my best advice. And also research what the requirements of that specific category. So, for example, in the supplements category or the healthcare category in general, there are lots of things you can and can't say on your listing, and that includes in your images and your A+ content. Make sure you're aware of what the requirements are so you don't accidentally do something that then gets your listing closed down. So let's say you've done your best, you've done all you can, you've acted, you've done everything properly, and still somehow you've got some sort of issue with Amazon, because this will happen. And I should actually say at this point, if something does go wrong on Amazon, it's not you. It's very rarely you. 9 times out of 10, it's them. So first of all, to reassure you of that. So let's say something has happened and you can't figure out what to do and you're not sure how to fix it yourself, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have to contact Amazon seller support. So this is the point where many sellers get frustrated, because what seller support is for is helping you with technical issues inside Seller Central, investigating bugs or errors, helping you get your account or your listings reinstated, escalating some issues to specialist teams. What seller support isn't for is any kind of strategic advice. They will never tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Often they won't even tell you what you've done wrong. They won't proactively fix anything without you raising a case. And sometimes they won't proactively fix anything without you actually telling them that you want them to fix it, which is another frustration. And also, if I'm really honest, they're not always great at giving the correct answer the first time, which is why some of these cases I mentioned earlier can drag on and on, because you're not dealing with the same support specialist every time you reply to a case. What will happen is you will raise a case, someone will pick it up and reply. I actually think sometimes it's AI, not convinced it's always a person. You'll get a reply, you then reply to that case, somebody else picks it up, and you get the point, and which can be quite frustrating. Many of the responses you get are templated, so that it can feel like you're not getting a response to your actual question, which also means that the replies can start to feel a bit irrelevant. And you might need several attempts to actually get the help that you need, and you need a bit of persistence. So, for all those reasons, seller support can feel really difficult. So, let's talk about what to do and how to make the best out of it. First of all, if you need to contact Amazon seller support, I would say start with a written case where possible and keep that written case really clear and really concise. I would be very specific. So, if your problem is related to a certain listing, for example, use the ASIN of that listing, tell them exactly what the issue is and exactly what you expect to be done. So, for example, ASIN X has been restricted. We believe this is incorrect for this reason. Here's the supporting evidence. Please reinstate my listing. That kind of thing. Stick to one issue per case. So even if you have multiple issues, so let's say you've got a few listings that have been closed down, raise a different case for each one. Because if you put multiple things in one email, what you often find is Amazon will deal with the first thing you've said and ignore the rest of it. So stick to one issue per case and keep your language really, really simple. It, However frustrated you are and however much you want to expand on what you want to say, keeping it simple and factual is really, really helpful because it helps the person at the end, whether they be an actual person or a robot, who knows, helps them understand better what the issue is and then hopefully help you better. So as I said, I would make sure you include a really clear description of the issue, maybe what should have happened versus what actually happened. So if you're trying to create a listing and you've received an error, explain what the error code is. If you're able to provide screenshots of things that you're seeing, that's really helpful. Often that's something you'll be asked for. Other things you'll typically be asked for is the ASIN number and or the SKU of if it's a listing problem. If you are referring to a previous case that you've opened, you want a case ID. If it's a flat file update issue, they'll want the batch ID. Those are the kind of things that people will want to see. So try and gather all of that together if you can. Common mistakes that slow things down is, as I've said, opening one case for several issues. The other thing is not answering the specific question you're asked. So let's say you raise a case and they come back and ask you to do something, and then you just go, well, actually, no, this still isn't working. Always acknowledge that you've seen their response, and if possible, maybe you've tried to action their response, or if you're not able to do what they suggest, explain why. Again, evidence screenshots is really helpful. Please don't ignore their instructions and then continue to chase anyway. You do need to acknowledge if they said, please try this, you do need to try it, even if you're going back and saying, I've tried this and it hasn't worked, because it helps build up the case. Definitely don't let cases close automatically. So if you don't reply within 5 days, and for some cases it's actually shorter, the case will get automatically closed. Do not let that happen, because once it's closed, you can't reopen it. And then you're starting again from scratch with a brand new case. And of course, you can reference the previous case in your new case, but it's still really, really frustrating when that happens. And also, please don't give up too early, because, as I say, it might take a little bit of back and forth to get the response that you need, but it is worth persevering. I would never suggest giving up unless you absolutely have to. Okay, so that's how to get the cases started. My advice then is, if you are not getting the response you need via email, or if the issue is urgent or you need it done really, really quickly, I would then use chat or phone support. So you might want to do that. If it's something you need sorting out instantly, then you might want to do this right away. If it's something that can wait a bit longer, you might want to see if you can resolve it on email first. But I would definitely get on chat or phone if you need to. However, I would always start with a written case. You can submit a written case, and then when you reply to it, you can ask for that response to be chat or phone. Something to know about phone support is that you can't phone Amazon directly, and you request a call back inside Seller Central inside the case. Sometimes the option isn't available, so if they don't have enough people at the time to answer the phone, then callback won't be an option. But often either callback or chat is. Chat obviously isn't as effective as being on the phone to someone, but it's still better than email. Obviously, it's in real time. But I would always start by putting your full case in writing first, just so whoever you get through to on phone or chat and they say, hi, what's the problem? You can say, I've documented it all, have a read of the case and come back to me. And that saves you just having to go over everything all over again. And that can often be really helpful. So let's say that you have done all of this, you have raised your case, whether that's you've raised your case in writing, maybe you're going back and forth on email, maybe you've ended up on chat, maybe you've ended up on the phone. If you're still not getting a resolution, I would ask for clarification. I would firmly push back and say, actually, this isn't helping. I've tried this already. I've told you this already, whatever the case may be. Just reiterate what you've done, what you've been told. Don't be afraid to push back if you're not getting help. And if you need escalation, I would ask for it. You can either do that in the case itself. You can say, actually, we're not getting anywhere. Please, can you escalate this case? Or something else I've done in the past is raised a new case and said, this case is to escalate this old existing case because I feel I'm not getting anywhere. And I would be as detailed as possible. I would say, this was my issue. This is what the support agent told me. This hasn't worked, or perhaps this was incorrect, or whatever your issue is. And I would always make a point of explaining how long the case has been outstanding for. So you might want to say, I raised this a week ago. It was quite a simple issue, still not resolved. Don't be afraid to escalate if you need to. The mindset that I think will really help you with this is that seller support and you working with seller support is a bit of a process. The first response often isn't going to be the right response or the most helpful response, and you are going to have to be persistent. So I would go into it with that mindset. Sometimes you'll be pleasantly delighted and your issues will get solved immediately, and that will be fantastic. And I really hope for you, whenever you're listening to this, that's what happens for you. But if not, I would say definitely be persistent. If things start getting too complex, if you're starting to lose time in your business because you're spending ages on chat or on the phone or just going back and forth with emails, then it might be time to get support. And actually, this is one of the most common things sellers contact me about is they're having some sort of issue and they just don't have the time or the knowledge or the patience maybe to just deal with it themselves, which I totally get because it is a big time suck, but it is something I am really happy to do. So if you ever need any support with this, you know where I am. I mentioned right at the beginning that I've got a free cheat sheet on how to deal with Amazon seller support, and it walks through the process step by step. The link for that is in the show notes for this episode, so you haven't needed to take notes. If you had take notes, that's brilliant, but you don't need to. So if you've got this far and you're thinking, oh, I should have written some of this down, don't worry. I go into lots of detail in that, and you can get that via the show notes for this episode. And I just want to leave you with a few thoughts. Firstly, I want you to know that having issues on Amazon is normal. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. It's kind of like a rite of passage, I think. If you sell on Amazon, at some point, something will go wrong. But it will be fixable. It always is fixable. Knowing how to deal with issues when they come up does make a big difference. So hopefully the advice I've given here on how to get the best out of Amazon seller support will really help you, because it can feel really frustrating. But I think if you go into it knowing that the first response, as I say, may not be the right one, that you might be speaking to a bot, not a real person, and knowing that, you know, all the things you can do for yourself, like making sure your case is really clear, sticking to one issue per email, escalating if you need to, trying to get on chat or the phone, all of these things really, really will make a difference. And the final thing I'm going to leave you with is don't give up. I've said this a few times in this episode, but if things get hard on Amazon, please don't give up, because you don't want to go so far to only go this far, if you know what I mean. And I promise that there's very, very few things that cannot be fixed. And if you ever need any support, then do feel free to reach out for me. And I'm always happy to give you some advice and help. So I will leave this episode here. I hope this has been useful. As ever, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, please get in touch, vicky@vickyweinberg.com. Have a lovely rest of the week whenever you're listening, and I will be back next week with another amazing guest episode.